I wanted to tell you guys about my dream game. It's something that, an idea that I've had for over a decade. I can't remember when I first came up with the idea, but I'll talk about, like the inspirations and the events that led to this idea. But I decided, from now on, I haven't done one of these in a while because I haven't been able to figure out what topics I wanted to talk about. So I figured, why not just talk about random ideas that I've had over the years, things that I most likely will never be able to do in any of my lifetimes. I think I'm old enough. I've reached several years old now, and I'm at the point where I'm old enough to give up on my dreams. I think that's a thing that happens. People get old enough and then they realize, maybe this might not happen. I think when I was younger, when I was maybe 15 to 1800 years old, I was thinking I'll get around to it at some point. I have time, but now it's no, I actually don't. Just if current projects are any indication, these ideas are probably not going to happen. So I thought it would be a good idea to just put that energy out into the universe. Because I was also like most people, thinking that I have to be first. I have to be the first to do this amazing idea for it to be successful. And if somebody beats me to it, then I'm a failure or something. And that happened recently because that bastard, I don't have anything against him, but Masahiro Sakurai has that YouTube channel. And I went to look at it today because he didn't take my idea, but he did something that I wanted to do and I thought was really clever. And so he has loading screens in his YouTube videos. And I thought that's years ago, and in 2019, when I was putting the ideas together for the new channel, I was looking for an aesthetic, and I pronounce it aesthetic for linguistic reasons, and I'll get into that at some point. But I say aesthetic, and I distinguish the A and the E because in the original Latin, it's called a diphthong. It's a linguistic term. I'm not going to get into that. Moving right along. Anyways, he's got loading screens in the videos, and when you're making a YouTube video, you need to be able to break up the chapters so that you can have timestamps in the description. And so when I was trying to come up with the look and design for the new channel, last year or so, I was like, oh, I should do loading screens. That would be so sick. And I'd have a loading bar or something, or a spinning PS1 style disc in the corner, and I'd have the sounds of the disc drive spinning as scene transitions. So that way, when you click on a timestamp in the description for the chapter markers, it doesn't run into. It's not in the middle of a sentence or something, because that's something we struggle with a lot when we're editing, trying to find the right length of time between sections in the script. It has to be at least a second, but most of the time it has to be 2 seconds, but sometimes it feels off. And so a lot of the time when we're trying to break up the chapters, and that's another thing is that, on YouTube, you have to be a second before where you think it is in the actual video, because just the way that YouTube's timestamp works, it's different than real time for whatever reason. It's a second early or late. It really depends on the situation, because sometimes it's early, sometimes it's late. You can never know until it's too late, and then you can't change it. You just have to deal with it. So, anyway, so my idea was to have loading screens, fitting in with the whole video game theme. And then Sakurai went and did that. Can I talk about that real quick? I feel like I shouldn't, because that would be a massive ass tangent. I don't want to. No. I just think it's funny, right? Real quick. Because this isn't the main topic, and I don't have a lot of time. Real quick, I just think it's funny that Here's a dude who's made no games. He made Kirby and Smash Brothers. And that somehow makes him an authority on game design. I thought that was just hilarious. Demos thought it was funny too. Both of us were like, wait, hold on, what? Dude made Kirby and Smash Brothers, and that gives him insight into how other kind of games are made. Like, seems to me like he should only be commenting on the stuff that he did. And I think it was it's disingenuous for him to say like, oh, this is how games are made. Cause no, you don't know. You made Smash Brothers and Kirby. So you're not qualified, I feel. And I respect the hell out of Smash Brothers. Like, like I really do. Like as an innovation of fighting games, that's something I've been thinking about a lot, and that's a video that I have planned. I'm working on a series on fighting games and how to innovate in that genre. Because Tekken 8's coming out. Huge Tekken fan. Obviously going to play it for the story. Obviously, do not care about the competitive scene, not one bit. That's just me. Shout out to Bon though. Hope you're doing well and training hard for the next Edinburgh or whatever. But I play Tekken for the story, straight up. That's I always have since 1997. And that's I think I also want to do before the game comes out, before or after, at some point, gonna do a huge Tekken retrospective. That's gonna be sick. I can't wait. But for now, I've been really thinking a lot about how to innovate within the fighting game genre. And I have, a couple ideas that I'm not super excited about, but I want to start talking about other topics just to maintain my own sanity. The videos are going to bomb, obviously, because one, YouTube doesn't like that when you branch out. And then two, you're established subscribership, they expect, or they subscribed for a certain reason. But I feel like it's still technically early, because if you think, right now the channel has 15,000 subscribers, and that's fine. But the goal for any channel should be at least 100,000. And I haven't wanted to get that far specifically because people assume that it's a Metal Gear channel, and it isn't. It was never meant to be, but that's just a topic that I wound up talking about the most, and that's what people expect. And so I don't want the channel to get super big, and then have people upset or disappointed when Metal Gear content doesn't come out. So obviously I'll never get away from Metal Gear entirely, and I don't want to, because there's still a lot of work left to do in that field, I think, or just things that I want to talk about, and it's just so much fun making those fanboys cry. It's just, maybe I'm a bad person, but maybe I just like arguing, like even in real life. Like I like having debates and arguments and taking up positions, sometimes contrary positions, things that you don't even believe, but just, like engaging with another person, hopefully on an intellectual level. Most of the time it's not intellectual, especially when it comes to a fan base, any sort of fandom. Generally you're not going to have an intelligent conversation, but that's part of the fun too. I like getting to that point where you realize this person, they're not all there. It takes one to know one. I know that because I'm not all there. So I'm seeing all the underpinnings of what's going on in their head and realizing like they're just not smart enough to have this conversation. And, I think it's like a badge of honor when I can, when I can defeat someone using logic. It's like some anime shit, like, aha, you've activated my trap card. You say what you will about Yu-Gi-Oh, but Yu-Gi-Oh was like some really top tier shonen, because there were some really interesting mind games that were going on. Like Naruto, Nault. You got to call it Nault now. I don't know if you knew that. I'm not going to get into that during this this whole spiel. What's the origin of the word spiel? I think that might be Yiddish or something. I bet you it's Hebrew or something. Anyway, back in the day, like, the mid 2000s, you had Naludo and Bleach. And me and my friends, we always liked Bleach more because it was more violent. And, it seemed like it was more adult. Naruto really felt like kid stuff. And that's a funny topic, actually, is how, like, Naruto and Harry Potter are basically the same story. You have this magical school, and you got these 3 kids, and you have the girl who's the know-it-all, and then you got the comic relief kid with bright hair. It's either Ron or Naruto. And then you have the 3rd kid who's like, who has ties to the villain who deals in snake magic, which is either Orochimaru or Voldemort, right? Like, they're basically the same story at the end of the day. It's just weird how those 2 things align. But anyway, we liked Naruto, but we always thought it was like, little kid stuff. But the thing that Naruto did better than Bleach was the strategy of the battles. The fights in Naruto, they seemed like they were way more strategic. Like, people were playing chess in those fights. Whereas in Bleach, even though we liked that show more for whatever reason, I guess it was just the Soul Society arc. Soul Society arc, one of the best shonen arcs in anime history. Like, that shit was phenomenal. But in terms of the fight scenes, basically Bleach just broke down to who's stronger, who has more Reiatsu. Usually Ichigo, because Ichigo, he's half human, he's half hollow, he's half Soul Reaper, and he's half Quincy. So he's got all the superpowers. But Naruto, like, you would have people that often you would have the underdogs winning, but they used strategy. Like Shikamaru, he would use the environment to his advantage and shit. Like, you didn't see that in Bleach. Nobody was playing mental chess like they did in Naruto. And so that's where Naruto topped Bleach, even though it still felt like little kid shit. But Yu-Gi-Oh! Back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Was also doing stuff like that. So, activating trap cards, but in real life, that's what it's like when you argue with a fan base online. Like, it's pretty much as close as I'll ever get to having an anime style battle in real life. 'Cause I've had tons of sword fights and I've taken all these martial arts classes and done all that stuff. But in terms of like drama and like the emotions that are at stake, you don't get that from like an octagon or a dojo, because, everyone's there just, to train and to test their skills or whatever. But it's like the stakes just aren't that high, like arguing online. Just, man, it never fails to produce good storytelling, and that's why I do it. But maybe I'm just trying to justify the fact that I'm an asshole. But like, I can say that, but the thing is, like, I'm like that in real life, even when I'm not anonymous. That's not the reason why I protect my identity online, is because I'm an asshole. Like, I do that straight to people's faces in public. So it's not that I'm hiding behind the veil of anonymity on the internet, because I would do that to people in real life. And I have done that. You could ask anybody, ask any of the Oath Keepers on the server, like, yo, is Vector really like that? And they will say, absolutely. Like, in fact, he's worse. I guarantee you they'll say that. So, yeah, I'm just a jerk. So, what can I do? Be better about it? No, that doesn't make any sense, because why should I change who I am because other people are stupid? That doesn't make any sense. And I say that as a card-carrying dumbass. Anyway, on to the main topic. My dream game. Would love to make this game someday. I have wanted to make it for over a decade now, as I mentioned. But the cards they just might not align, because it might be too complicated for me to pull off, and you'll see why. So basically, the idea is it's a cross between Max Payne and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. So that should give you an idea of like, okay, what are we looking at here? Like, what's just put those two games in your mind, and just make them have a baby, like pandas in the wild. Are pandas able to give consent? What the fuck am I talking about? So, like I was saying, when I was younger, I would have liked to have been first to market with an idea like this. But these days, being first to market can oftentimes be worse for you in the long run. Like, you might actually fall into obscurity more if you're the first. Like, it's better to be second or even third in a lot of cases, so that like someone else can make all the mistakes, or they can, they can build a following, and then you can refine their idea, improve upon it. Because generally, you're usually not going to be the first to do anything. Like, whenever you tell somebody an idea for a story you have, for example, at some point you're going to get somebody who says like, oh, that reminds me of this or that, or oh, that's kind of like blah, blah, blah. Like, I was telling a friend of mine about the story I'm working on, and they said, oh, that's kind of like the Sword of Shannara. And they're not the same thing at all, but, tropes, they just exist, and you can't avoid them. And at some point, The Simpsons has already done it. Like, that's just a thing. That's just a fact of life, right? So embrace that. Don't shy away from it, because a lot of people I know, like, when they find out that their idea isn't completely original, then they scrap everything and they start over from square one. I don't do that anymore. So the inspiration, I think it started with, like gun fu movies, and like the gun katas in Equilibrium, which was I think that director took the concept of gun kata and he refined it for Ultraviolet, that very, very terrible Mila Jovovich movie, and other movies like that. I think the genre is called bullet ballet, and if it's not called that, it should be. But those movies where, I guess, like The Matrix technically counts. You have like a lone heroic violence figure, like the John Woo movies, and they spin and they do all these crazy flips and tricks, and they run on walls and dodge bullets like that. Shoot dodging is what they call it. So what I wanted to do was to take, I guess, do like an akimbo, guns blazing kind of story. Really just very something really cinematic and inspired by Hollywood action films. Desperado is a good one. No, Desperado actually sucked. I'm thinking Once Upon a Time in Mexico. That was no. It is Desperado. Desperado was the good one. Once Upon a Time in Mexico was trash. I think the first movie might have been El Mariachi. Either way, it's the second one. The second movie is the good one, but the first and third, whatever they're called, because it's a trilogy, like the Once Upon a Time in Mexico trilogy, 1 and 3 are shit, but 2 is freaking incredible. But anyway, so, I was inspired by movies like that, and also Max Payne, which was inspired by movies like that. So then, all right, you're wondering, where does Tony Hawk come into play? So I had always been a huge fan of the Tony Hawk games. But, I think the last good one was Tony Hawk 4. Underground and Underground 2, they weren't terrible, but that was when the series kind of started going off the rails, not in a good way, because you want your games to be off the rails, give the player some agency. But I thought, 3 and 4 were generally regarded as the high points of the series. I guess Thug 1 was pretty good. You could drive a car, and that was pretty cool. And I thought, Thug 1 did a lot to advance skating culture. But then, like with Bam Margera and Thug 2, even though I liked that game, it was just too much. So Tony Hawk 3 and 4, like from a formative standpoint, in terms of games that had a huge impact on me, Tony Hawk 3 and 4 is just those games have always stuck with me. And the THPS 1 and 2 remake, that was great. Loved that. I'm so glad that they brought that back and that I had a chance to relive those memories. But I actually never really played 1 and 2 when they first came out. I got into the series with I played a demo of 2, but that doesn't count in my opinion. And so 3 and 4 were the games that, they were just they were influential. That's only word I can use to describe it. So the idea, it started to take shape years after Thug 2. Thug 2 was 2004, I think. And yeah, that's right. THPS 3 was 2001, and then 4 was 2002. They used to churn those games out quick. Nowadays people complain about yearly releases, but the Tony Hawk games, I guess they were just so easy to develop. They had Neversoft had their engine, and they just had to iterate on that. And so yeah, they used to churn those games out super quick. But the idea didn't start taking shape until years after the series technically ended. So it would have been sometime around 2011, I think 2012. I think I was in Japan at the time when I was hammering the details out of how the game would work. So it's a third-person shooter, plays just like Max Payne, but then there's a tricking element to it. And so it was around this time, I think before, I forget what year that was, but I think around 2010 or so, 2010, 2011, I was really big into, I guess you can call it a sub-sport. I don't know what the technical term for it would be, because it's not a sport. It's like an activity, because I guess there are competitions technically, but it's more like a personal thing. I was into parkour for a long time, and then the next evolution from that was tricking. And so tricking is just all about just doing flips and shit. And, I think in certain circles it was called XMA, Extreme Martial Arts. And I think Discovery Channel, they had this show. And so, I had this group of friends, and, I had one group of friends that would do parkour, and then I had another group of friends and they were into martial arts, and I had another group of friends and they were into more like the acrobatics and stuff. And so, essentially I wanted to combine all of those disciplines and Gun Fu into a game. And so it's Max Payne, right? I said that 3 times already. And then you have the tricking component. So you have a jump and a crouch button, and then the analog stick, and you combine those in different combinations to do flips and tricks and fucking spins and whoop-de-loop-de-woos and whatever, you're doing all this crazy shit. And so the gimmick of the game is that, it's kind of like a fighting game, but not really. It's more like you're doing combos of like you're inputting these moves, and there's some Devil May Cry influence too. I got to slow down because my brain is starting to like steam's coming out of my ears. I wish I should have taken some notes so that, I could properly convey this idea. But basically, okay, you do flips and tricks and shit, butterfly twists, back flips, side flips, handsprings, cheat 720s. And, I can if people are interested, there's actually a website that has a list of all the moves within the tricking inventory. I don't know what you would call it, but it would just this is the reason why this game will probably never get made, is because just the animation budget alone would be ridiculous. And maybe if there was a way to do it procedurally, I'll have to look into that. But the way the game would work is you would string all these moves together, and as you're doing combos of this flippy tricky shit, you're building a special meter like in Tony Hawk. And when you fill the special meter, the way that's represented in game is that enemies can't track you. So if you have a full special bar, then you're essentially impervious to damage. You can't be shot because you're too unpredictable, right? And so you lose your special bar if you do 2 moves in a row, just like Tony Hawk, right? And so you have your level, and then you're flipping around the level and jumping off walls and doing all this flippy tricky shit, right? That's the technical term now, flippy tricky shit. And so, like the goal is to vary your move set so that enemies can't predict where you're going to be. And then if you fill your special meter, then you're essentially invincible. And then, that's your, that means it's your turn to return fire. But you can also shoot at any time while you're doing the flippy tricky shit. But you're going to have a harder time. But then I thought there should also be a suppression mechanic. And that's too complicated to talk about right now. So, maybe in another episode, but that was the basic idea, was that it's just a third person shooter. And then you're doing flippy tricky shit to build a special meter that makes you invulnerable. And so when Mirror's Edge 2 was Mirror's Edge Catalyst, because it was a prequel, so it technically wasn't a sequel. There was no 2. So Mirror's Edge Catalyst came out, and so that game had a mechanic where if you were in a flow state, if you were moving fast enough, you couldn't be shot. And I saw that and I was like, God damn it, they beat me to it. But it's not really the same thing at all. And so that game also sucked. So something to learn from. But in my idea, it's not how fast you're going. It's about, doing different moves, like the way Devil May Cry works the same way. If you do the same move twice, you get less style points. So you have to have, a varied move set. But the moves in my game, you're not doing combos to attack enemies, because you just attack by shooting. And so it's more like you're doing combos, you're doing like fighting game style combos in order to protect yourself. I guess you get a force field, technically. I don't know. That's a weird way of describing it. I'll just move on. So anyway, yeah, Mirror's Edge Catalyst had that mechanic, move fast. I think move at top speed to not get shot. That was essentially how that game worked. And so you had to be good at the parkour in that game, but it also wasn't that difficult, I felt. And so my idea, doing combos should take some skill. And then recently there was that game Rollerdrome, which has been making the rounds. Apparently it's really good. I'm looking forward to playing it. That game is literally a cross between a third person shooter and Tony Hawk. Like, you're on roller skates and you do flippy tricky shit. There's like half pipes and gaps and stuff. And so you do tricks, and doing tricks in that game refills your ammo. But in my game, it's based on Hollywood action movies, so the guns never run out of ammo, like they do in the movies. And also like Devil May Cry, the guns, they never run out of ammo. So you really don't have to worry about resource management and keeping track of your ammo, because you're going to be spending most of your time, trying to do the flippy tricky shit. But I thought that was cool. Like in the past, I would have been like, oh no, like they beat me to it. There's a game. No. Oh, it's a third person shooter mixed with Tony Hawk. Oh, my life is over. No, I actually think it's awesome now, because now that I'm not the first to market, now I have games that I could pull from for research. I can see what that game did, find out what makes it work, what didn't work in that game, and iterate on that design. So my idea is still technically different, but there's this one aspect of the game design that I know, like, if I can just nail this one aspect of the game, then I would consider that a success. That would be, I could cross it off my bucket list. And so the way that it works is, I had this idea, Dead to Rights. Oh, that's a good one. Or it was good. Dead to Rights was good, but you can't flip the camera controls. And so it feels weird to play now. It hasn't aged well just because the camera controls, but Dead to Rights was pretty cool back in the day. Anyway, unlike Max Payne, in Dead to Rights, when you did your shoot dodge, if you dived, Dove? Is it dove? Well, I don't want to say dove because, like John Woo movies, there's all these doves flying around. So I'm going to say dived. I'm pretty sure that's improper. I don't care. And then you had John Woo's Stranglehold, the game, which I streamed. That was also very good. But specifically in Dead to Rights, you do your shoot dodge, you would dive, and then at the end of the dive, you rolled out of it so that you could keep running. In the Max Payne games, and also in Stranglehold, when you dive, you crash into the ground on your shoulder, and then you're stuck on the ground. In Max Payne 3, if you hold down the trigger, you'll actually stay on the ground, and if you want to stand up, you have to let go of the fire button. And so I thought, like, okay, what if there was a mechanic where if you were skilled enough, actually, you know where I got this idea from? It's the Ukemi system from Tekken. It's literally that. So Bond can tell you, if you get launched into the air, assuming you're not stunned, you can hit a button right when you hit the ground and you won't crash to the ground. You can roll into the background or foreground. You can roll backwards and forwards. Or you'll stand straight up instead of crashing to the ground and losing some time. So like it's called Ukemi. I think it's called Ukemi. Ukemi is just Japanese for break falls, which it's not what you would actually do in a fighting game. But in a fighting game, a counter is different than what it is in real life. But anyway, I'm pretty sure it's called Ukemi in Tekken. Other games have Ukemi, but basically that's it. Is right when you hit the ground, you hit a button and you'll roll out of the fall instead of crashing and burning and dying and blood spraying out of your jugular and your wife and kids sitting there at ringside crying out for you, "Daddy, Daddy!" Basically Ukemi allows you to avoid that scenario. So that was the idea, was you dive and then right as or around the time you hit the ground, you hit a button and you'll roll out of it instead of sliding on your shoulder like in the Max Payne games. And so it's just that rhythm of like diving and rolling and like trying to fine tune that. That was the whole thing, was that if I could just nail that one aspect of the gameplay, then that meant that the idea was viable. If that part didn't work, like if I couldn't get that part to work, then the whole entire idea would be scrapped. So I actually went as far as designing the controls for this game. That was actually the first thing I did, was figuring out how the controls should work. And I was really proud of the control scheme that I came up with, because it's designed to be played on a controller. You could play on a keyboard and mouse, but I didn't figure any of that out. So obviously, if I was to ever make this, if anybody was to ever make it, they would have to allow for controls to be customizable, which takes development time. A lot of people don't like to do it, but it's in your best interest. So do that. But anyway, like I designed the controls based on like a standard controller. So the way it worked is, X button to jump, or A button on a 360 controller. I'm going to use PlayStation controls because PlayStation fanboy in the house, represent. X button to jump, but you hold down the L1 button, and that was the modifier button. So you had your normal controls, and L1 was your modifier, and it did, I guess, enhanced versions of all your regular moves. This is also how I would fix the controls for Devil May Cry 5. Like Dante plays like shit, just have the lock-on button be a modifier, get rid of the stupid style switch button. Doesn't make any fucking sense for there to be two sword buttons. Anyway, so, left analog stick to run, obviously, but if you hold down L1, it's sprint. And a lot of games do this. And I'm always excited when I see games that have sprint mapped to the L1 button, because that is proof to me that people can get used to that. Because when I came up with this, like clicking L3 was the standard for sprint, and games generally did not deviate from that. But these days, you actually see a lot of games where you hold down L1 to sprint. So I'm really excited about that, right? So anyway, hold down L1 to sprint. If you're holding down L1 and you're sprinting and you press the jump button, you'll dive. So that's how you dive is, it's the same button as jump. So it's kind of context sensitive, but not really. But, if you hold down the L1 button and you're not moving, I guess you'll do a high jump, right? Maybe that won't work. I don't know. But either way, if you're sprinting and you hit the X button, you'll dive instead of jumping. And so, oh man, it got complicated, but in a good way. Like it was like, whoa, I can't believe I came up with that. Okay. If you're running, you hold down the L1 button, you'll start sprinting. And then if you hold down jump and then you let go of L1, then while diving, you'll right yourself. But the character that you played as, I should have explained that first. I'm fucking it all up. The character that you played as, they had superhuman abilities, because this game is not going to work unless your character has superhuman abilities. So they can actually jump. They have like a 30-foot vertical, right? Because they need to be able to dive. And I think I got the jumping mechanics I took from, there was a Ghost in the Shell game on PS2, and Major Kusanagi could jump really far. And I thought like that's about the right distance that the main character needs to be able to jump. So you can dive like pretty far, I guess. And you can also jump like doing a sprint jump. You could clear maybe like a bus, I guess. I don't know. Not a double-decker bus. You would run flat into that. But like, you could jump onto a single-decker bus. Do they even have those in the UK? Let me know. Anyway, what was I talking about? All right, so left analog stick to run, L1 to sprint, X to jump. And so while holding down L1 and running or sprinting, hit X to dive, and so you got to keep holding down L1, and so you'll be flat in the air, right? And then if you hit the circle button, that's the crouch button. The circle button is crouch. You hit the circle button before or at the same time you hit the ground, and then you'll roll out of the dive, and you can continue sprinting, and that'll continue your combo. If you don't hit the circle button before you hit the ground, and then you'll lose your combo, and then you'll slow down significantly, and then enemies will get a beat on you real quick, and they will blow off your medulla oblongata. So you want to continue your combo. Being able to continue sprinting allows you to string another move on top of that. But then where does the flippy tricky shit come into play? Oh man. Oh, why did you have to go and ask? Because now I got to break down those controls. Okay, so the circle button is crouch, right? But if you're high enough in the air and you have room, you hit the circle button, you'll flip. And so you can use the analog stick to dictate the direction of the flip. And then the game would track, whether it's a side flip, front flip, back flip. And that's why, the protagonist needs to be able to jump as high as they do, so that they have room to string all these flips and shit together. But it wasn't just flips. Like, I was trying to figure out how to do a butterfly twist in the game. And a butterfly twist, look it up if you don't know. But it's actually, there's a butterfly kick, and then you add a spin to that. And so it's actually a form of kick. So I was thinking like, okay, there needs to be a melee button. Like triangle should probably be the kick button, and so that way you could use the jump, crouch, and kick button to along with the analog stick, mind you. Don't want to forget that. So you combine combinations of the jump, crouch, kick, and analog stick to create different moves. Stuff like quarter circles, half circles, things like that. And then I guess you'd have to time your kicks at certain points during a flip, or like before you initiate a flip to turn that into a B twist. I don't know. But the B twist, like it's such an essential move in martial arts cinema that, that move's got to be in there. But like I mentioned, if I could just have the ukemi system, and then a couple flips, and maybe just like because there's that game Overgrowth, which was made by like two guys, really high quality game, and they had a really dynamic flip system where you just hold down shift and then you use the WASD keys to do flips, and you play as a bunny rabbit. I think they actually describe him as a bunny rabbit. I would just say rabbit, but I think specifically in that game, he's a bunny rabbit. And the reason why is because that game is extremely hyper violent, and that was how the developer maintained his sanity, was like, instead of seeing real people being impaled on spikes and having all this blood shoot out of people's jugulars, there were cutesy little bunny rabbits. Why am I even talking about this stuff? But no, right, because you could do flips and tricky shit, but there was no reason to do it except for looking cool, kinda. I'm gonna play that game at some point for a video, because it's an important game to talk about. A lot to learn from that game. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's pretty much it. In terms of the controls, obviously L2 and R2 for different guns. If you had a two-handed weapon, then L2 would be alternate fire, obviously. Square was interact. I think at one point the game had a punch and a kick button. Punch, kick, it's all in the mind. There was a punch and a kick button, but eventually I decided to take out the punch, spike the punch, because it was kind of like redundant. I was trying to be like so-called character action games, and I don't like that term for the genre at all. But that's neither here nor there. But, like in most character action games, I mean, my favorite game of all time, Ninja Gaiden, you got the X button and the Y button on your Xbox controller is weak and heavy attack. And so I wanted to be like that. You'd have punch for your weak attack and then triangle for your heavy attack. But after a while, I figured like there doesn't need to be a punch. Maybe there does. I don't know. Because, I mean, that opens up a lot of possibilities. So you could have the punch and kick button and string together combos that way. So yeah, that's I mean, I'm still in the planning phase, obviously. R1 I don't think had a function. Maybe reload. I guess if square winds up being punch, and that's a big if square winds up being punch, then R1 would be optional reload. But as I mentioned, the guns have unlimited ammo, so like R1 might as well be for nothing, or it could be change weapons. But I don't know. I forget. Like, did I want you to be able to change weapons? I guess because Halo did that. I think hold down Halo 3 or one of those. You hold down R1 to pick up weapons. So that would be good. I think maybe R1 to pick up weapons. Square could also serve that function and just, have, I don't want it to be context sensitive though, because that can cause problems. And maybe I'll talk about that at a certain point, because that can create a situation where somebody's trying to punch, but they accidentally pick up a weapon. And so it's good to, for most games, it's not a problem, but I think for this game, since it would take, like the inputs would need to be really precise, I think it'd be better to have a separate button to interact and pick up items. Assuming I even want to do that, because there was the one idea I had was that the protagonist would have a specific weapon per encounter, but no, I feel like that's not fun. It was an idea, but I quickly scrapped that because it's fun to pick up other weapons. And like, oh, that weapon's better than the one I have, or, that weapon's better for this particular situation. So I'm going to pick that up. And I think there also needed to be a throw weapon feature. So yeah, like you got to be able to throw weapons, and I haven't figured out how I want to do that. So probably never going to happen. Like it's just such an ambitious idea, but it's something that I would like to work on at some point. And so, cause it is, in fact, this is the game that I've dreamt about for over a decade. It's my bucket list game. It is in fact my dream game. Not to be confused with the games that I literally dreamt up. There was just several dreams that I had in the past that the dreams were actually games. And so at a certain point, this is going to be a whole series. So at some point I'll talk about each of those because I want to turn them into videos. Because I mean, these are dreams. Once you hear about them, you're going to be like, "What the hell? You dreamt that?" Because you know how like dreams can be like really, really crazy and they don't make a lot of sense. Well, there was a period of time, and for whatever reason, my dreams were ultra coherent. It was actually like it was weird that they weren't weird, if that makes sense. Like I was having straight up like movie dreams with freaking plot lines and, you know, like resolutions and exposition dumps and all kind of shit. It was insane. So, that's something that I've been toying around with for a while. So got a lot of stuff in the works. Really excited about it. So you can all look forward to that.